Did you know that Norway sells way more electric cars per capita than the US? Norway.
Well, Buddy isn't kidding. But how did a nation built on fossil fuels become an EV paradise? And what do these synth pop legends have to do with it? Are EVs really the only answer to all our problems?
We argue that if you buy an electric vehicle, that's the most important thing for the climate and the atmosphere.
There are too many EVs.
But maybe there's more to this electric utopia than meets the eye. Well, to understand Norway's EV obsession, we've first got to rewind to the 1980s. Believe it or not, Norway's love for EVs goes way back to the late 80s, when synth-pop band a-ha was in Switzerland and saw a Fiat Panda that had been converted to run on electric power. Lead singer Morten Harket brought a similar car to Norway, where he began driving it in bus lanes, refusing to pay toll or parking fees. The argument: EVs were good for the environment and ought to be incentivised. That car got impounded many times and put up for auction, at which point the band would buy it back and repeat their performance. They were spurred on by environmentalists Fredrik Haag and Harald N. Rostvik. The antics had the desired effect, and the synth-pop revolution helped give way to the country's EV revolution.
It's a part of the beginning of the story, definitely, but a lot has happened since then.
This is Christina Boo, the Secretary General of the Norwegian EV Association, a non-profit founded in 1995 that helped advocate for EV adoption, shape policy and liaise between the government and buyers. Possibly a little more influential than a-ha in transforming Norway into the land of the EV and into a country Elon Musk loves. Today, Norway's EV statistics are bonkers. Studies show that EVs accounted for 82.4% of Norway's new passenger car sales in 2023. And that's not including plug-in hybrids. And in 2024, those figures have only become stronger.
We are above 92% because of stronger policies implemented in last year's budget, or the budget for this year. And for the first time in history, we might be able to reach a climate goal, which is a very good feeling.
She's referring to Norway's Zero Emissions 2025 goal. Essentially, the country's aim is that in 2025, all new cars sold will either be battery electric vehicles or fuel cell electric vehicles. In other words, they're aiming for no new internal combustion engine cars to be sold in 2025. But more on that later. Norway's EV landscape is dominated by Tesla, which in 2023 became the most sold car brand in the country for the third year in a row.
But the Tesla story in Norway has been, it started of course with the fans.
Peter Raum is the editor-in-chief of Norwegian car magazine Motor.
The first cars had a lot of breakdowns, and the cars now, they got a lot of bad press. But then they got their act together, and they have really stepped up. So they are today have quite a strong position in people's thinking about the brand.
What we've seen, though, is that there's definitely a situation, especially the last year or so, where Tesla has increased their market share when it comes to how many cars they sell. And it was January a year ago where they decreased the prices quite a lot. And we've seen that other car manufacturers and importers might have had a bit more problem with competing with Tesla.
In 2023, the Model Y was Norway's best-selling car, with over 23,000 units sold, around 3.5 times as many as its nearest rival, the Volkswagen ID.4. Which isn't to say that Norway doesn't have any issues with Tesla. It's thrown its support behind its neighbour Sweden, where unions are demanding better wages and working conditions. And it's also helped block the import of Teslas into Sweden. But this hasn't affected the number of Teslas in Norway. In fact, even as Americans struggled with their own product, the Norwegians have been steadily EV myth-busting for years. The fact that EVs have gained such rapid popularity in the cold, vast Nordic landscape have put to rest fears about EV batteries not doing well in sub-zero climes and about range anxiety. EVs are rapidly closing in on 100% market share in Norway.
The only reason it's not 100 is that Toyota is lagging in production of EVs. The moment Toyota is on board, which is a big brand, second biggest brand in Norway, it will be EVs all over.
But how the heck did Norway do it?
For 2050, we have a goal of reducing our emissions by 90 to 95%. This is also stated in a law. It's called the climate law.
This is Ragnhild Sierstad, the State Secretary of Norway's Climate and Environment Ministry. And it turns out Henrik Ibsen was right. The Norwegian government didn't just draft 1,000-word policies, instead they did things. See, early EVs in Norway were odd-looking machines that reminded you of Kermit the Frog. The Think City and Buddy EV, for example, weren't exactly the most popular cars in a country that historically has loved driving.
Hey, fella! Get out of the road!
And a country that's produced some pretty phenomenal drivers like Petter Solberg. But see, electric mobility isn't a partisan issue in Norway.
The specific goal of having all new sales of vehicles in 2025 to be zero emission is the goal that has been there all along across different governments.
I think part of the success in Norway is that we've kept the policies in place for a long time. And it's partly due to different political parties agreeing, at least to a certain extent agreeing, but also agreement across the sort of civil society sector.
Even if governments have come and gone, Norway's held course on its climate goals and EV policies that go hand in hand with it. Early moves to encourage EV adoption included tax exemption on buying electric cars, and EV drivers didn't need to pay toll or parking fees, or for the use of ferries when crossing Norway's famous fjords. But some of these measures have since been rolled back to ensure EV policies don't just benefit the rich. So tax exemptions still exist for EVs cheaper than €45,000.
We argue that if you buy an electric vehicle, that's the most important thing for the climate and the atmosphere. So it's not necessary to have a really expensive electric vehicle, just a functional one at a reasonable price.
And as EV use is encouraged to help meet the 2025 zero emissions goal, hybrids and internal combustion engine cars are discouraged by being priced higher.
There will be no ban on ICE cars, even new ICE cars in 2025. But it's the politicians that have decided this goal, and they have to use, and they are using, the measures they have to make it happen. And those measures is the tax system that we have in Norway. In practical terms, it means taxing ICE cars or combustion engine cars out of business.
What's really interesting, though, is that Norway's EV policy existed long before EV technology became viable. So over the last decade or so, even while policies remained relatively unchanged, the number of EVs available changed and the rate of EV adoption rose sharply.
And if you look at EVs in Norway, it's actually proof of just one thing, and that is politics works.
Despite Norway's EV success story, there are a few concerns.
There are too many EVs.
With the race to meet the zero emissions goal, there's concern the charging network won't be able to support the number of EVs the country is expecting.
EV infrastructure is not good still. The only reason you can go from north to south in Norway with an EV is because of Tesla. We don't have an infrastructure today that can handle 5 times as many cars as cities as they do today.
There's obviously a lack of so-called normal charging or AC charging for people to use on a weekly basis when they're sort of just park in the street. So that's probably one of the challenges going forward.
And And there's a worry that incentives to buy EVs are acting as a deterrent to people using public transport, something the government is actively trying to remedy.
So we have urban growth deals. That is an agreement between the local authorities and the government in the big cities, making sure that we have policy measures that aim at reducing the traffic growth or stating that the growth in traffic should be with public transport, walking or cycling.
Although some believe that a sparsely populated country like Norway, with great distances between cities, won't ever be able to completely wean itself off the car.
I think you're pretty deluded if you think that Norway can do only with public transport in the whole country. But in a city like Oslo, Bergen, the biggest cities, obviously, it's a very, very major push to have public transport, to have people bike and walk.
But even the world's EV capital has a long way to go to fully electrify its transport.
The remaining part now to make it successful for all segments, also the heavy-duty vehicles, is to make sure that we have charging stations for heavy-duty vehicles. So that's the next step in electrifying the Norwegian transport sector.
When we talked about the 2025 goal, we're very close to reaching it for passenger cars. But for light-duty vehicles, we're not. So we're not perfect. We still have a way to go there.
And while the energy going into Norway's EVs is green, mainly hydro and wind, there are often a few eyebrows raised over the fact that Norway is a significant exporter of fossil fuels.
We are a country we are drilling oil. Our national fortune is based on oil. There's no reason to look at Norway as especially green country.
We export oil and gas to Europe as it's an important measure to have energy security in this continent. When it comes to transport, there is also an aspect to remember that electricity is more energy efficient than fossil fuels. Thus, we had to start with transport, while other European countries are focusing on changing the energy system from fossil to renewables. And as that happens, also the demand for Norwegian oil and gas from Europe will decrease.
Grey areas aside, the question remains, can Norway's EV success be replicated by the rest of the world to combat climate issues? Well, there are lessons to be learned.
I hope that more countries would do like Norway, use stronger policies. If you buy a new car today, it's going to pollute for 20 years. It's ridiculous.
But replicating the methods used by a rich country with abundant green energy and a fairly small population is always going to be tricky.
This is not about Norwegians being very different from other people. This is about Norwegians having an opportunity to buy cheaper cars than being electric because of the taxing system. And that's really the main story.
What's your take on Norway's EV strategy? And do you think it could be implemented in your country? Let us know in the comments below.